So everybody, welcome back to the Health Wealth Podcast, and this is episode 1 of series 2. We made 100 episodes for series 1, finally finished it off with our live Q&A, which was hugely successful, and now we are ready for series 2. It's going to be even bigger and better. In series 1 we got better guests, we've got more in-depth education, and we're going to be sharing even better stories for you of people naturally healing themselves. And on our journey to optimal health, what better way to start off series 2 than with speaking to a biohacker. In this episode we speak to Ivo, who is a biohacker. We go through his pillars of optimal health and dig into them. There's an absolute ton of information in there that's going to be useful to absolutely everybody that you can start applying to your life today, and make sure that you listen right through to the end, because the value doesn't stop dropping throughout the whole thing. So let's not waste any more time. We're going to get right on into the episode. Enjoy the show. Awesome. First of all, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and how you got into biohacking in the first place?
Okay. So my name is Ivo. I'm 43 years old. I got into biohacking around the age of 27 when I started noticing if I do certain things, my performance in life becomes better. I also own a beef organ supplement company. And this is mostly because I'm very passionate about eating beef organs and beef liver in this particular.
Yeah, so I attended a talk of yours a few weeks back, which is what made me really want to get you on the show.
Thank you.
Which was amazing. Went through so much stuff, which I completely agree with. So I just wondered if you could, I know you have sort of 9 pillars of health that you go through. I wondered, could you just tell us what they are, and then we want to dig into some of them topics to really try and get the details out.
So the talk I gave on the topic was chronologically about each pillar that I discovered in my life. So first I discovered avoiding toxic substances, weightlifting, fasting, cold exposure, the importance of diet and nutrition, sunlight and red light, sauna exposure or sweating during exercise, brotherhood and community, and the 9th, pain and suffering.
Awesome, yeah. So they're all things that contribute to optimal health. So, I mean, let's take the first one, because that's one that we try and talk about a lot as well, the toxins. We're surrounded by them nowadays, aren't we? What are some of the main things that we're getting our toxins from nowadays?
A lot of personal care products like deodorants, soaps, also detergents that we use in our laundry, and all kinds of basically fragrances. The fragrances are actually a group of toxic chemicals that manufacturers can use in their products to make it smell good, but a lot of these are hormone disruptors. They are allergens, known carcinogens, and avoiding those has been really beneficial for me. It actually started when I realized a lot of times when people had perfume on them or deodorant on them, I got this sharp pain in my nose, like someone was stabbing me with a needle or a knife. And that's one of the first things I started incorporating in my life.
Yeah, I think you get like a stuffy nose sometimes, you spray it on and stuff, that reaction. Yeah. And I think you made an interesting point in your talk that I think when you see, sometimes in the ingredients list, it's just written as fragrance, isn't it? And that's where they can use those list of chemicals. You've no idea what they're using.
A lot of them work as xenoestrogens, so they act very similarly to the hormone, the estrogen, mostly labeled as a female hormone. Yeah. And disrupting the hormone balance, this can actually lead to a lowering of testosterone in both women and men, of course.
These are fertility issues for men and women as well.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of people don't know this, but for example, some scientists have pointed out that even though testosterone is labeled as a male hormone, in women, the hormone that's most abundant is actually also testosterone. Of course, at a very much lower level than for men, but this shows it's not just a male hormone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important for everyone. What about things like, I mean, medications are quite a big thing nowadays. So many people on them, and obviously we're getting a lot of toxins from them. Is that something you found yourself, or were you not really on medications?
I didn't take any medications back then. I did notice, for example, when I was 18 years old, I had my very first very strong hay fever attack. I actually came back from an exam, walking back home for 30 minutes straight. I was sneezing every 2 seconds. My eyes were filled with water, completely red and itchy. The back of my throat was itchy. And then my grandfather at the time, he suggested to buy some antihistamine over the counter in the pharmacy. I noticed that even after a few days, I didn't want to take that medication anymore. There were all kinds of side effects. Couldn't think clearly. Felt unfocused. Just basically, I felt like I was all over the place.
Yeah. When you first started biohacking, were you suffering with poor health? Is that what got you into it, or was it just that you just began to get interested in the subject?
I never actually looked at myself as being in poor health, but as I got along the way, I see a lot of things now, and I'm like, oh yeah. When someone tells me I deal with this issue, I'm thinking, oh yeah, in my 20s, I dealt with that issue. Oh, it completely went away. So a lot of things that I didn't even see as an issue, but a lot of people deal with, whether it's eczema or acne or cellulitis, all these things that we just think, well, it just happens, and all of a sudden it just went away when I started living a certain way. For example, the cellulitis, I remember I was 27 years old, and I was like, what is this? What is this feeling on my butt? And I actually Googled it, and all these pictures and blog posts about women actually, and pregnant women, oh yeah, cellulitis. I'm like, women? I'm a grown man, why do you have cellulitis? And around the same time, I actually started lifting weights, and 7 months later, I noticed it was completely gone. And my skin was super smooth and silky, beautiful skin, all my muscles nicely puffed up. I was like, oh, it just went away. I'd never put the link between lifting weights and removing cellulitis, but there's actually is one.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of stuff that we accept as a lot of people put it down to aging now, don't they? Which was when I got into health. That was one thing. I was starting to feel sore all the time. I was gaining weight. I was tired. Poor focus and brain fog. And people say, "Oh, you're just getting older," but you're not, are you? And once you start living properly, you can just see all those things disappear.
Exactly.
We need to not accept it. Yeah.
Totally.
And you touched on weightlifting there, which I know that's another important pillar you talk about. So what are the main benefits we get from weightlifting?
That's the second one that I found out about. The main benefits would be actually weightlifting makes life easier. You're physically stronger, everything becomes easier. You have more energy, you can take on more tasks. A lot of things that might have seemed stressful at first, all of a sudden they're less stressful because you've dealt with lifting heavy weights in the gym, whatever heavy is for that person at that time. Weightlifting also increases BDNF, which is very important for brain health. Brain-derived neurotropic factor, it is called, and it actually sprouts new neurons, it protects connections. And so when we lift weights, and also when we do certain cardiovascular exercises, this compound is produced in the muscles, then goes into the bloodstream and up into the brain. I noticed the first few times I started weightlifting, there was a sense of clarity after the weightlifting that I didn't feel before. So I wouldn't say I immediately got hooked to it, but let's say 2-3 months in, as I started seeing all these benefits, I'm like, wow, there's something to this.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with a lot of stuff. Once you start to implement it and you start to see the results, you get that positive feedback, which makes you want to do it more. Exactly. Which I think, is true with exercise and other things. And I know that you talked about what's important is increasing the difficulty of the exercise, isn't it?
Yes, it's called progressive overload. So actually the first time I started weightlifting in the gym, I didn't notice much results. I went for 3 months, I followed the program that a trainer at the gym gave me, and he mentioned, well, are you still drinking alcohol, are you still partying, so all those things are not going to help. But what really helped me was actually taking a notebook to the gym, and every single time I would write down the weights I was doing and the amount of repetitions I did. I also always kept my rest at the exact same time, which was 1 minute between sets at the time. And then every single time I went to the gym and I did the same workout, I would have like 2 different workouts, A and B. So one day I go A, the next day I go B, or I rest 2 days and I go A again. And I would look, how many did I did last time? And almost every time it was a surprise. I either did more than I thought or less than I thought. I noticed on days that I was actually feeling fatigued or not really that strong, I was actually stronger. I noticed on other days that I felt amazing and good, I was actually lifting less weight. So that then I could instantly correct, like, okay, the next set, I'm gonna make sure I do more. Or the next set, I'm gonna make sure I push more. Then in 3 months, I had a lot of results, like phenomenal results. 6 kilos of extra pure muscle, leaner, especially in my upper body, was very noticeable.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because we all know people that, gym bros or whatever you call it, who've been, going gym years and years, they do the exact same thing every week and they basically look exactly the same. So that's what they're missing out on, is that increase in the difficulty. And does that also tie into, I think one of your pillars was about pain and suffering.
Yes.
And I guess with exercise, you're putting yourself through some pain and suffering to get stronger, aren't you? But I guess that's on the mental side too, is it?
Exactly. I didn't notice that at first, and it was actually Andrew Huberman who pointed it out a few months ago on one of his podcasts. When we actually do something we do not want to do, but we know it's beneficial for us, a certain part of the brain increases in size, it grows. It's called the mid-cingulate cortex, if I'm not mistaken. And this part of the brain is very much associated with willpower. And in people who live a long time, this part of the brain is bigger. In people who are obese, this part is smaller, but when they start dieting, this part starts growing. And a lot of times in the beginning, especially like going through the pain and suffering, the one thing that motivated me was the results I was getting pretty rapidly. Nowadays, I can actually freely say to people, yeah, I went boxing, for example. I don't like boxing. I don't like ice baths, but I do it anyway. And it gives me the benefits, because actually when you do enjoy an activity, this part of the brain does not grow. So this part of the brain needs that stimulus of like, I don't like it, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's important as well. In today's society, we want everything straight away, we want everything easy, we want everything exactly how we want it, instant gratification. So I think we're very opposite of that, aren't we? So doing those things that do challenge you, that are hard, they're going to help with that. And I'm sure everyone else has felt, I know I've felt on those days where you want to take the easy option, but you do the difficult thing, and afterwards you feel great. You get that, a dopamine rush, and you feel good. So yeah, it's pushing yourself through it, right, to get to that point.
Yes, many times in the gym or anywhere else, I'm pushing through a difficult moment, and I just use that frame like I'm going to feel so good after this.
Yeah.
Because I went through that moment of hardship first.
Yeah, that's it. Nothing good comes easy, does it? So you've got to push yourself through. Another thing I'd love to talk about is fasting. So give us a little bit on that. And do you do longer fast? Do you do intermittent fasting? What's your kind of routine around it?
I mostly do intermittent fasting every single day. I prefer having my eating window a bit earlier in the day. Supposedly there's research that shows that the digestive system works optimally around 11 a.m. So I usually start around 9:30, 10:30, and I eat until 4 or 5 p.m. and then I stop eating. The most benefits I noticed mostly with fasting was especially when I travel. A lot of times when we travel, we don't find the foods we want or the healthy foods we want to eat. Airplane food is not really the best food. Airport food is not really the best food. And I noticed just not eating the whole time that I'm traveling, and it could be anywhere between 15 to 36 hours depending on where I'm going on the planet and what actually the time zone is where I'm going to. I skip all the meals until the next day in the new time zone when it's 10 a.m. And that way also my body knows instantly, okay, it's 10 a.m. now. And it actually helped my circadian rhythm to that level that I never have jet lag anymore, anywhere. Anywhere I go, I'm instantly adapted.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did find that on, I think the last time that we came on holiday to Dubai with my family, coming out, I actually prepared food myself and brought it in like a container, because you're actually allowed to bring home cooked food on. But on the way back, I just fasted, and I actually felt great. It's a 7-hour flight, and after a flight, you normally feel tired and low energy and rubbish, and I actually felt great. So I definitely felt the benefits of that. Yeah. And like you said, our circadian rhythm is really important. So if you're locking yourself into that and able to go across different areas of time without any issues, then that's really important. The way I'm similar to you in terms of the eating window. I look at it as eating in daylight hours, which probably lines up with, you said about the research shows our peak digestion is sort of in the morning. Because if you think about humans naturally, thousands of years ago before electricity, we would have just ate during daylight hours, wouldn't we?
Exactly.
So I try and keep my eating to daylight hours, and I feel that gives benefit. Do you ever do longer fasts as well, or do you just stick with the intermittent?
The longest fast I've done is only 54 hours. I don't do that often, no.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I find for people like us that are locked into the lifestyle, I don't know that there's much extra benefit we get from a long fast. I think for people who are living a lifestyle that's maybe more toxic and not as great, and they're trying to improve their health or lose weight, maybe a longer fast is more beneficial to them. Do you think that would maybe be true?
That makes a lot of sense. I've noticed that a lot of people who are really touting the benefits of fasting, and maybe they were overweight first, maybe they had, like you said, very toxic lifestyles first, eating really bad processed foods. I don't really notice that many more extra benefits from having a longer fast. And I also think when someone's trying to build muscle, it's not really beneficial to be having, let's say, a 70-hour fast every 2 weeks, like some people do. I think the perfect balance is in the middle.
Yeah, definitely. So you're like about a 16/8, are you most days?
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
a similar thing that I try and go for. So something else that's I've got into more recently as well is the whole sunlight. You know, and I what I haven't got into so much is the red light. I know you use red light things as well. So run us through a bit of that.
So the red light I've been using for 4 years straight. First, I heard on the podcast how beneficial it is for mitochondrial function. And I actually did a test. It was a stool test. And when the results came back from the stool test, it said my mitochondrial function, the efficiency was like in the bottom. Like it was at 38%. And when I first started using the red light, I instantly noticed, especially at night. So I would turn on the red light at night when the sun sets, and I would not turn on any other artificial light. And within 2 or 3 days, I noticed that the red light gave me a mood boost. And even though the red light was very bright, it didn't really wake me up so I couldn't sleep. I was active, I was awake, but as soon as I go to bed, I instantly fall asleep. And the same thing in the morning, I use the red light as a way to wake up. I usually shine it on my genitals, and supposedly that helps to keep testosterone at a really high optimal level. Every time I had my testosterone checked, it was always like literally off the charts. That doesn't really mean that much in this day and age because a lot of people's testosterone is very, very low.
Yeah.
So being off the charts is just normal testosterone for 2-3 generations ago. And other things I really like about the red light, especially when doing boxing or weightlifting, any sore part of the body, and this is almost sounds like magic, within 5 to 8 minutes, the pain is gone. Now I tell people, this doesn't mean it's instantly healed, but at least it's amazing for pain relief, and it's also speeding up the recovery process.
Yeah. So is that in the evenings? Is that sort of as soon as the light, natural light goes down, as soon as the sunlight's gone, you'll put the red light on? Yeah.
Yes, that's the only light that I turn on wherever I am in the world after sunset.
Yeah. What do you have? Is it like a big light? Like
Yes.
a panel?
It's a panel about this big. It's from the company called Mito Red Light. It works really well. It's been in my suitcase for 4 years straight, traveling the world everywhere, being banged up. Sometimes it falls down because I knock it over. It still works great.
Have you ever, since you started using it, have you ever had a period anywhere where you've, for whatever reason, you've not been able to use it for a day or two, and have you noticed negative effects, or have you literally just not missed any days?
Maybe at the most I've missed 2 days. I haven't really noticed a drop in performance. I would say that's because of all the other things I do as well.
Yeah.
And maybe it stands to reason that the more you use it, the more efficient your mitochondria work anyway. So especially since I've been doing this for so long, for 4 years straight, missing a couple of days is not really going to make a negative difference.
Not an issue. Yeah, exactly. And in terms of sunlight, do you try and get sunlight early in the morning and sort of get outside first thing? I know people say about sunlight in the eyes is important for your circadian rhythm. Do you do things like that as well?
Yes. Almost everywhere I instantly wake up with the sunrise, or within 30 minutes or 40 minutes of the sunrise, go outside, go on my balcony, or go to the garden. If I'm within the 1 hour time frame that the sun got up, I will look directly into the sun. It's called sun gazing. If it's a little later, I won't do that because it could cause damage to the eyes. And I've noticed on the days that I'm outside a lot, definitely an increase in energy, performance, mood. One of the main reasons I discovered this was actually after my grandfather died a couple of years ago. I was in Miami at the time. I had to go to Europe. And in the beginning, I still felt great. But as the days passed on, while I'm in Belgium, where it's very cloudy, very dark, I could feel like my mood completely tanking. I went back to Miami after the funeral, and the first 2-3 days I was very sad, could not think about my grandfather without crying or without feeling like I was in a lot of mental pain. Until one day, and every single day I was walking to the pool to have my meal at the pool. And one day I just giggled, basically for no reason. I'm like, oh, what's going on? Why am I so happy all of a sudden? Am I not thinking about my grandfather anymore? But no, I was still thinking about him every day. But now I could think in a loving way, in a way like, oh, we had such a good time. He taught me so many things. I was actually happy to reminisce about him. And that's when I first noticed like the sunlight, especially in Miami. I think there's something special about the latitude there. But Miami, same thing with Greece. I just get a really big mood boost when I'm in those environments where there's a lot of natural light and almost no clouds covering the sun.
Yeah, I mean that's a real accepted thing as well. There's it's called SAD disorder, isn't it? A seasonal affective disorder, I think, where people suffer depression when it's grey and cloudy, and we can all feel it. You go outside in the sun, and you feel good, don't you? And I mean, I obviously from the UK, I know exactly what it's like, where we're like 3 months at a time, you're not seeing the sun. It's grey every day, and it definitely it affects you. And I think the sun is powerful for us. We need to be out in it as much as possible. I think as humans, we're getting way less, everyone pretty much is getting way less sun time than they should be if you think about how we used to live.
Yes. And especially in the UK and Belgium, I actually looked up this graph of the 10 most cloudy cities in the world that gets the least sunlight. I believe 8 of the 10 cities were in the UK, and then Brussels, which is the capital of Belgium, was also there. So it's that whole area just covered. Nowadays, even on days that I feel great, I don't really think it can't be any better, but I feel great already. I walk outside and I just notice a little bit of like, whoop, the dial turned up even a little bit more. Like, I didn't even know it was possible, but it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you noticed anything in terms of once you've cleaned up your diet and you cleaned up your lifestyle, have you noticed how your skin is better in the sun? Because sun cream is another thing which is a toxin coming to our body.
Yes.
So have you noticed that your skin is better in the sun?
Yes. Even up until to my 30s, when I was still consuming mostly seed oils or like foods that were organic, but they're still crap foods.
Yeah.
And I noticed I would get burnt easily, and that's over now. I would actually be surprised because my skin tan is on the darker side, and I would still get burnt. Even I remember I came back from Peru, which is a sunny place. I came to Belgium, and the next day I was in the sun for like an hour or so and actually got burnt in Belgium. Yeah. So it was most likely actually something I ate, not necessarily the sun itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's down to our food. Another topic then is sleep. Sleep is obviously important. Do you have a certain amount of hours that you aim for? Do you have a certain routine around your sleep that you do to optimize it?
I always aim for 9 hours. Sometimes that's not possible, but on the days I don't get 9 hours, maybe 3 days later I'll sleep for 10 hours. There's some scientists who say maybe in ancient times humans were sleeping up to 12 hours, especially in the northern hemisphere in the winter. So I don't think it would be something like we can do too much of, especially when it's dark out. My sleep routine is mostly not eating 4 or 5 hours before I go to bed. And of course, no bright artificial lights except the red light. If I use my phone, I have a blue light blocking filter on my phone. Same with my laptop or any other devices.
Okay, so you use, because I know some people use the glasses, the blue light blocking. You have a filter that goes actually on your phone screen and on your laptop screen, is that right?
I used to use the glasses, and my mother still uses the glasses. And for about a year, she actually told me she was taking sleeping pills. I think it was called Zolpidem, which worked or not worked. And basically those kind of medication, they just knock you out. It's not really a sleep stage, it's like I'm knocked out stage, like someone hit you with a baseball bat. And I actually gifted her one of the blue light blocking glasses, and she told me since that day, she's able to sleep better, and she completely got off the sleep medication. I was just like surprised and maybe a little bit shocked, like, wow, these glasses, they only cost $25, and the doctor didn't know about this. The doctor didn't suggest it. Nobody knows. That was also one of the first moments I got this light going on, like this is profound for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think blue light exposure or blue light is light pollution, isn't it? I think a lot of people don't understand how much it affects us. I mean, I think for the majority of people and within the mainstream, thinking that some light is going to affect your sleep and going to affect your health, it seems ridiculous, but see, once you get into it, it's clearly not, and your mother is clear proof, or your grandmother, sorry, that just changing the glasses and then it's improved her sleep by so much. So yeah, it's trying to get people to understand these things, that they make a difference, they're important.
I used to think I was some sort of a night owl or vampire. I would go to bed at 1 or 2 a.m. And the first day I started using blue light blocking glasses, I put them on when the sun set, around 6:30 at the time. It was in Peru. 40 minutes later, I was about to start dinner. I'm like, I can't stay awake. I literally got drowsy, went straight to bed. And since that time, I've been going to bed more with the sunlight, maybe 1 or 2 hours after the sun sets, depending on where I am in the world.
Yeah, that's it. I think it applies to so many things that we talk about. It's trying to get back to the natural way that humans live, isn't it? Because that blue light is something we wouldn't have had, and you took it out. Suddenly, you're back to going with the sunlight,
Yes.
which is what humans would have been originally,
Yes.
and that's what we need to get back to. I think our environment is moving so far from how humans should live and how they have lived for however many thousands, millions of years, and I think that's really, as a whole, is what's really affecting health and giving it such a big downturn.
100%.
Yeah. So another thing I know you said about, again, which is another thing I've looked at, but I've not got massively into it myself, is the cold exposure.
Mm-hmm.
So what got you in that, and what are the benefits you get from the cold exposure?
The thing I personally like the most about the cold exposure is the actual dopamine boost I get from it. After some really tough cold exposure that literally physically hurts, I remember when I started upping the amount of ice that I put in the ice bath, it kind of feels like people are beating you with sticks the whole time. And when I have that feeling like being beaten with sticks, after, everything's come so smooth and easy. There's never any procrastination. I just feel like checking things off my to-do list. And it just, also another thing is actually the vision. Everything looks sharper, colors are brighter. It's like beyond what a coffee would do. A coffee, usually people get like a little bit of a boost, and then there's a drop off, and some people would even say a crash, and it's kind of short-lived. But with the cold exposure, especially in an ice bath, it just lasts for 4 or 5 hours, and it doesn't feel like there's a crash. It just slowly, the energy slowly returns to baseline. And other things that people say about it is it helps burning fat. I haven't really noticed much in that regard. Maybe I don't really need it in that regard. There's so many benefits to cold exposure. We could do like hours on it. And what I like about it is everyone will have like a benefit that works better for them. Whatever their body needs most, they will benefit from it, from cold exposure.
Yeah. I think with the weight loss, I think the cold activates the brown fat cells, which I think helps with the weight loss. I've definitely heard that as well, and yeah, it helps with as you said, that mental clarity. Do you find it's better to do it at a certain time of day? Like, do you do it first thing in the morning, so it got you ready for the day? How do you do it?
I prefer to do it in the morning to really reap the benefits of that dopamine boost. I also noticed actually at night, if I do a cold shower before bedtime, I will actually sleep better, or sleep deeper, sleep longer. There's some people that say it's not a good idea to do before bed because it'll ramp you up, it'll make you more awake. As you said, it increases brown fat. So one of the ways it does, it converts white fat into brown fat. And the reason why it's called brown fat is because the fat cells that are called brown fat have more active mitochondria. So it would make sense that if the mitochondria work more efficient, it doesn't necessarily will wake you up. It will just make you more efficient at whatever you need to do at that time. So it will make your sleep more efficient. People don't think about sleep being a metabolically expensive process, but there's a lot of processes going on while we sleep. Grow muscle, memory consolidation. And during sleep, the brain actually physically squeezes to push out the toxins or whatever inflammation that is built up during the day. And it's basically a cleaning process. So all these processes take energy. So it stands to reason that a cold plunge would help with that.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Because I've heard of people saying having a hot shower a bit before bed, because then your body lowers the temperature. But it seems a cold one can also give benefits, maybe for different reasons, but can help with that. What about around exercise? Is it better to do? Do you do it before you work out? After? What is there any difference?
I do it before workout, cools down the body, so you can actually dig deeper or go for longer in whatever exercise you partake in. Again, with the dopamine boost, it will help with exercise. Some people say a cold exposure after exercise will blunt the hormetic response, but in order to do that, you have to be in the cold for a long time, like 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So the 2-minute or 3-minute ice bath's not really gonna blunt whatever you worked for in the gym.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, really, whether people want to do it morning, evening, before exercise, after exercise, they're going to be getting some benefit from whenever they do it. And again, it goes back, I suppose, to the pain and suffering, doesn't it? Because going in the cold is it's not enjoyable, is it? So it's pushing yourself further and improving yourself again. Is that tying into that same thing?
Exactly, and helps with willpower. Again, like you said, the pain and suffering. I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. And you also get that satisfaction, or knowing you're the man, you did it, even though you didn't want to.
Yeah, I imagine it's the same with the the exercise and doing the difficult things. You get that dopamine rush after, and you feel good. And yeah, I think same. I imagine it's the same with the cold exposure, and it's like with exercise. I think whenever you do a hard workout that you didn't want to do, you never regret it afterwards. You always feel good afterwards, don't you?
Exactly.
You've never regretted it, so you can feel the benefits. Another kind of biohacking thing, I don't know if you're got into this one, is grounding. Do you do that? Are you a fan of that? Do you do it yourself?
I actually do that a lot. I actually have a pair of 5 fingers. They're not that durable, so I've bought 5 pairs of them already. And after like 6-7 months, there'll be a little hole in my shoes, and no one knows I'm walking around with holes in my shoes. I'm basically grounded everywhere I go.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, I was in Colombia, and I had a lot of pain in my leg muscles. And I actually went outside and just stood in the garden for maybe 5 minutes, and the pain went away. Now, this is very anecdotal. There are some scientists who say when we are grounded, it's impossible for inflammation to be in the body. It's just one of the things I do on top, especially because it's free. You don't have to buy anything. You just have to be in the grass, be in the sand, be in the ocean. Every single time we take a shower, we are grounded. You can literally test this with electrical equipment, and you put the grounding meter into the faucet stream, and you'll see it is grounded.
Oh wow, that's interesting. I think most people wouldn't realize that that's grounding. I think it's been, like you said, inflammation. It's been shown to have a good benefit on, and I think it lowers blood pressure too, grounding as well. So it's a great benefit. And again, it brings us back to it's living as humans naturally would. We would have naturally been in contact with the earth, with water all of the time, and keeping our our electric current or our electricity in tune with the earth. Yes. There's electromagnetic fields everywhere. Our heart's the biggest one in our body, isn't it? So keeping that in tune is obviously going to be of benefit to health, I would think. Let's get on to the biggest topic then that we've saved for last. Let's talk about food.
Okay.
So I know that run us through what you eat, and then we'll talk about things you cut out and reasons for that, because people are going to be probably surprised by the diet you eat.
So every day I eat the same thing. I start my day with raw beef liver, usually half a pound, sometimes up to 1 pound, and then I usually have another 2 pounds of raw ground beef, or any other organ I can find, whether it's heart, kidney, testicles. I've had many others as well, like brain and eyes. And usually towards the end of the day, or even throughout the day, if I'm working out a lot, I will have fruits, only fruits, no vegetables at all. And that has probably been one of the strongest compounds in my life. A lot of people say I have great cardio, and it's very astonishing because I never do any cardio. Only in the last 2 years, I've been doing private boxing classes. And other than that, I don't do any cardio. So I attribute most of my cardio to either the red light or the raw beef.
Yeah. And so what first got you into eating it raw? And how did you start it? Did you just go all in? Did you try it a bit at a time? Did you cook it rarer and rarer? How did you do it?
In Belgium, we have a few things you can buy at any butcher called steak tartare, américain préparé, américain nature, and it's basically ground beef, which they usually chop up with onions, parsley, salt, black pepper, all kinds of different sauces. And I actually really enjoy that meal. It's very delicious, but I don't have time to prepare it. So over time, I would make it every day or almost every day, and I just started losing ingredients. No onions, no sauce, just less and less, until it was just ground beef and salt. And it tasted really delicious. And at the same time, I'm also thinking, well, I'm cutting out vegetables, I'm cutting out bread, pasta, everything basically that comes from a plant that is not a fruit. And I don't want to lose weight, I want to maintain my weight. So I just started eating more and more beef. And then I started adding in organs. And especially with beef liver, when I had beef liver by itself without the ground beef, I noticed an instant improvement in like my awareness, the colors, the mental clarity, and I was like, I'm onto something. And I started adding other organs and more organs. There's a lot of ancient cultures that say whatever organ you want to improve, whatever you want to have more of, that's the organ you should consume from animals. Like you want more heart, you want more stamina, eat heart. And liver is involved in so many processes in the body, basically all of them. And for example, mental clarity is a big one with liver. When I was younger, I would have a lot of ruminating thoughts, it's called, or just loop thinking about something you don't want to think about and you can't put it aside. It's just like there, nagging the whole time. And a few months in eating beef liver, I was actually talking to a friend and asked him what the benefits were for him. He was also eating beef liver almost every day. And he said, when I eat beef liver, I don't think about things I don't want to think about. And then I realized the same thing happened to me. Like if someone mentions something, a topic or a conversation, and I don't really want to think about it, it's now super easy to just like bring the thoughts to something else, focus on something else and do that without having this other thought ruminating in the head for the whole day.
Yeah. And do you only have beef? I mean, you said beef mince. Is it only beef you have? Is it only beef mince? Do you eat different types of meat?
I eat lamb sometimes, lamb mince, but no pork and no chicken.
Yeah.
Because they are omnivores.
Yeah.
And sadly nowadays, a lot of big corporations that have farms, they give these animals all kinds of crap food, and that crap food then gets incorporated into their tissues, and then we consume it. And beef is more of a clean animal. Even when cattle receives soy and grain, which I don't want in my beef, I want them to be grass-fed, grass-finished, be outside in the sun, eating grass their whole lives. But even when they do receive soy and grains, a cow is more capable to convert some of the omega-6 fatty acids into saturated fat, which is actually very beneficial fat for humans. Again, saturated fat increases the efficiency of the mitochondria. Mitochondria love stearic acid, it's called, which is in saturated fat.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, with the certain animals, the ruminant animals, the cows and the sheep, with their stomachs, they can filter out a lot of that stuff, can't they? Whereas the omnivores is more, it's going to be in them. And we find that a lot with people who are very ill and very sensitive. You know, even pork and chicken can flare them up. But then if you can get them to just the beef, is when it's a lot cleaner and they seem to have less of it. For I mean, obviously you said about vegetables, you know, you cut them out. And I think in your talk, actually, you made a very important point, which I hadn't thought of so much before. But you talked about how people just group fruits and vegetables together. They just say, oh, fruits and vegetables. But actually, they're very different, aren't they? So you eat fruits, but you don't eat vegetables. So what are the main differences between them?
So, would you like to be eaten?
No, not today.
No. So, exactly. If any animal would try to eat us, or we to try to eat any animal, the animal runs away, it fights, it bites, it kicks, it flies away. It does whatever it needs to do to defend itself. Just in the same way, plants don't want to be eaten either, but they're stuck in the ground, so how are they going to defend themselves? They do that by producing plant defense chemicals that when we eat a plant, whether it's the leaf, whether it's the root, like potatoes, carrots, or other root vegetables, and when we eat those things, we destroy the plant. The plant can't procreate. So it upregulates its defenses to make sure animals don't eat it or don't eat it too much. And the opposite is with fruit. The plant wants us to eat the fruit so we can either spit out the seeds or have the seed travel through our digestive tract and then be fertilized by our poop, and a new plant can sprout from that. So that's why a lot of plants, they also have these really colorful fruits to draw the attention from animals that eat it or from us, and that's how it works.
And I guess that, I mean, fruits are sweet tasting as well, aren't they? They're going to have been more attractive to humans
Yes.
when they're searching for food, right?
There's also less sweet fruits, like for example cucumbers, of pumpkins, olives, avocados, and all these. So a lot of people use avocado oil, olive oil as a cooking oil. It's not actually a plant oil; it's a fruit oil. Same with coconuts.
Yeah. Do you still stick to certain groups of fruit? Because obviously there's so many, and some are higher in sugar than others. And obviously we know that a lot of the fruits nowadays have been kind of genetically modified a little bit to not what they used to be. So is there certain fruits that you still avoid, or will you eat any fruit?
I will eat most fruits. And one day I had my DNA checked, and supposedly it could be that I'm a little sensitive to salicylates. And salicylates is one of these compounds that the plant produces to protect itself from predators. And salicylates can be high in some fruits, for example, dates, and other fruits have no salicylates. Like, for example, bananas, peeled pears, pomegranate has some salicylates, but it's not that high into it. So I mostly eat those fruits that are not that high in salicylates. I also eat a lot of watermelon, especially when I'm working out a lot. It's very hydrating.
Yeah. I mean, watermelon, yeah, definitely. And one of the things I find funny is that with watermelon, some people would say, oh, avoid that because it's got a high glucose. I always get them the way around. There's the glucose index and there's the glucose load. But I think it's the index is just how quickly it goes into your blood, but it doesn't take into account how much. It's actually very low sugar watermelon, but it just absorbs very quick because of the water. So it's not, for some people who are saying you should be lower carb, they might say avoid it, but actually it's not much sugar in it at all.
Exactly. I also was surprised about how low it was in sugar. Watermelon or watermelon juice. I will have those type of fruits usually around my workout or with my last meal of the day to help with sleep. Carbohydrates do help with sleep, just as they do help with making muscle, growing muscle. I actually have noticed when I work out more and I up the fruit intake, I become a little bit leaner. It's like there's this sign of abundance to the body. I like ketosis. I like sometimes not eating any fruit or carbohydrates at all, only fat and beef. But there's something to having the dessert, having the fruit. Fruit or carbohydrates are very important for fertility, for thyroid function.
So you talked a little bit about ketosis there. So how much fruit are you having each day? Would you say that a lot of the time you're not in ketosis, or do you think you are maybe most of the time you just have a bit of fruit now and again? And
Every morning I am in ketosis. Of course, there's levels to it.
yeah.
I was once at a biohacking conference and I had my insulin and ketone level checked. And I just had 3 bananas. So my blood glucose was somewhere around 110, 115, which is elevated, but I'm like, oh, for just eating 3 bananas, that's nothing. And I was still making ketones. I had ketones in my blood. So I was like, this is amazing. I'm a hybrid. My body can make whatever fuel it needs and use the fuel that it wants. Some people say, oh, when you're in ketosis, you should be at 3, whatever the number is. Actually, when someone is metabolically flexible, they will make less ketones because they don't need that many ketones. Their body knows how to use them efficiently. So in the beginning, someone can be at a level of 3, but someone who's in ketosis multiple times throughout the day, goes in and out. I stop eating food around 4 or 5 p.m. So the next day when I wake up at 6, 7 a.m., I'm in ketosis.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's probably your body's probably very fat adaptive, like you said about metabolically flexible. So you're able to still produce ketones after eating that. So I think once you get your body in tune with how humans should eat, then our body responds and works perfectly as it's meant to, and is able to flip between the food sources and the energy sources. So with vegetables, because this is a big one. This is one that I always, when you're talking to people, it's one of the big ones they struggle to take in. Is that we've always been told vegetables are good and vegetables are healthy, and everyone's brought up with that. And to try and get that message through to people that actually maybe they're not, it's difficult. What were some of the things that improved in your health from removing vegetables?
I'm glad you asked. So these rough vegetables, the roughage, are really rough on the digestive tract. And one of the things I've noticed is better skin and better smell. A lot of people, they use all kinds of deodorants, perfumes to mask the smell actually from the food that they are eating. Because the skin, being the largest organ in the body, is one of our detoxification pathways. So whatever we consume is like expelled through the skin, through the poop when we go to the bathroom. So when we have all these toxic compounds being in our skin, will have an effect on how the skin looks, how smooth it is, how silky it is. Brain fog, for example, is another thing that cleared up. Mental clarity is better when I eat less vegetables. When I first embarked on this path, I was also thinking like, am I gonna mess myself up big time, not eating vegetables? So the first week, the first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks, and when I look actually at the nutrition label, for example, of beef liver, it's so much more nutritious than any vegetable. So we're not missing anything. People sometimes think, what about magnesium? There's magnesium in beef. There's even magnesium in ground beef. When I eat 1.5 kilos of ground beef, that's at least 300 to 400 milligrams of magnesium in there. So there's actually nothing in vegetables that we can't get from beef, and especially liver.
Yeah, that's another thing that I think people struggle with, is that meat has got so much nutrition in it, and we don't appreciate that. Because I think one of the things as well that's important when it comes to vegetables, because you said about the nutrition label, and you look at the nutrition label of stuff, but it doesn't tell the full story, does it? Because we have to think about bioavailability, which is important.
True.
And the form they come in, isn't it? So tell us a bit about that, because obviously with plants it's not always in a usable form for us, is it?
Exactly. A lot of times when we, for example, eat chocolate and people think there's magnesium in chocolate, this magnesium is not bioavailable, so it's basically expelled. A lot of vegetables and plants, they contain a lot of phytic acid, and phytic acid actually binds to minerals. So when we eat phytic acid or we eat these plants, the phytic acid is binding the minerals from our body, and we actually end up with less minerals than before. With beef, we don't have those things. Beef doesn't contain defense chemicals, and like I said, there's just no point in eating vegetables. And when we even, let's look at something more, what's the word? There's a study once they did with babies. I believe there were 30 babies, and they let the babies eat whatever they want for months on end. And these babies would try all kinds of things. They would even just put their hand in the sugar jar, in the salt jar, and they would just go through intuition. And months later, they tested all these babies and noticed that none of them had a nutrient deficiency. All their markers were great. And we see this in our families. Children, 1 year old, 2 years, 3 years old, they don't want to eat vegetables. They'll take hours while their parents are obliging them to eat vegetables. They'll cry, they'll scream, but give them meat, they gobble it up. Even liver, they gobble it up. Give them fruit, they will eat it. But these really bitter vegetables, when the baby or the child puts it in their mouth, they just know this is not food, and just spit it out.
Yeah, I agree. It's a natural response, isn't it? We should be listening to children. I've read that study. I think it was done in Canada, and it was because it was orphans, wasn't it? I think they did it in an orphanage, because I don't think it would get past human rights nowadays. But it was really interesting. Like you said, they were all completely healthy. I think there was even one child who had rickets, and they gave them they put cod liver oil there, and the child drank it until their rickets was gone, and then they never touched it again.
Wow.
Just crazy. That's a small child. So yeah, absolutely. And I think going back to the bioavailability, I think they've done research that shows that if you eat chicken on its own, you get however much protein or whatever's in it. But if you eat it in a sandwich with the bread, you absorb probably not even half of that protein you would have got, because of, like you said, the phytic acid in it, preventing it. So yeah, I think it's something that people need to take into account. Don't read a nutrition label and say, oh look, I'm eating this vegetable and I'm getting this much of vitamin C and vitamin A and whatever, but you're actually not. You're not getting it at all. So yeah, people need to take that into account and look at what the actual nutrients they can use, like in animal foods. And I know you touched earlier on this, is seed oils. That's another big issue, isn't it?
Yes.
Tell us some about seed oils and why we should be avoiding them.
Up till maybe 60 or 70 years ago, seed oils were not even used as food. They were used as motor oils to keep machines running, until people realized we can put these in foods. They're really cheap to make, really cheap to produce. And seed oils are really high in omega-6, inflammatory omega-6 acids. One of them is, I believe it's called, you can correct me if I'm wrong, oleic acid?
I think linoleic.
Linoleic acid, exactly. Linoleic acid then can get incorporated in our fat tissues and break our fat tissues, making people more insulin resistant, more diabetic, so to speak. And there's a lot of scientists saying that this is at the root cause of the current obesity pandemic in especially the US, but all over the globe nowadays.
Yeah.
So seed oils should be avoided. Before people started using seed oils, they used animal fats, butter, lard, tallow, all these very nutritious fats from animals that have a lot of vitamins in them as well. And seed oils don't have any of these vitamins. They're also oxidized very rapidly. So one biohacker once mentioned me that one of the main causes to lung cancer nowadays, number one, above smoking, is actually the inhalation of seed oils that are being cooked in the kitchen.
Oh.
So this fume coming off of the pan or the deep fryer, whatever is used to use seed oils, causes lung cancer.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very good reason to avoid it. Yeah, yeah, they're very unstable, aren't they? I mean, even light can oxidize them, not even just the heat as well. So yeah, definitely, I think people need to avoid it. Listen, we're running short on time, but I wanted to ask you definitely before you go. Say someone listens to this and they think, you know, I like everything he's saying. It makes sense. I want to try something. If someone was going to try eating raw meat, what would kind of be your advice of their first steps of it? Because can they just get it from anywhere? Does it need to be from a good butcher? And is it best to, you know, go very slowly into it? How do you eat it?
I would say that almost every country on earth has some sort of a raw meat dish. I would say start with that. That's how I started. Get rid of all the fluff they put on top, whether that's like, sometimes they decorate the plate with nuts, arugula, like I said, onions and all those other things. And just, you can slowly increase the dose. Or what I especially like about beef liver, when you have your meal and you're not used to eating beef liver or eating it raw, have just a small piece. Many people told me, oh, I'll just have a small piece, and oh, it's not that bad. It's actually nice, especially the ground beef. Eat what you're already eating and just start incorporating it. A small piece, every day a small piece, and then once a week you buy more of the ground beef or the beef liver or whatever you want to consume more of. It's just starting. People think it's this huge thing, like it's not that big of a thing as they make it out to be. And I totally get it. I remember when I started, for example, an all beef diet, I was literally thinking I'm going to die within a week or something. So actually, the only thing I noticed was more energy, more stamina, and just an improvement in overall health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. Once you start to get those benefits, which come pretty quick, that reinforces it, and you feel more comfortable with continuing it. Then, also before you go, I know you have a supplement company as well. Tell us a bit about them, because they're slightly different to what people might think normal supplements are.
So the supplements are actually food. The organs are freeze-dried, and then this powder that's freeze-dried is put into a capsule. So you're basically just eating food in a capsule. You can have it with any meal. I wouldn't say it's a meal replacer. You can place your meal with it, but then you'll be gobbling up the whole bottle, which is not the point. It helps people that know that organs are good for them, but they don't like the flavor, or they don't want the hassle, or the supplements just make it way easier to have some every single day with every single meal.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose that maybe for someone who is getting started and they're not sure they can handle the liver, that's maybe a good way for them to get started with it.
And especially people who have never eaten beef liver, a lot of them, they notice instant benefits from just one dose. They feel more focused, they feel more clarity, they feel more energy. Yes.
That's awesome. Listen, Ivo, let us know as well where people can find you and where they can find your supplements as well online before you go.
Yes, people can find me on Instagram as HKEvo, IVO, and my supplement company is called No BS. You can find it on Instagram as No BS Europe.
Perfect. I'll put all them in the show notes so people can find it easily.
Thank you.
And thank you so much again for coming
Thank you,
on.
brother.
Thank you everyone else for being here. We'll be back again next week, and let's get optimal together.